Applying confidence within the aircraft's performance envelope implies a knowledge of the aircraft's performance outside the envelope. Before going solo, you must be able to recognise and recover from out-of-control situations, such as the stall and the spin. Your training is designed to ensure that these situations never occur unexpectedly at low level. You must know how to recognise and avoid unintentional stalls and spins. The practice stall is entered from level flight. Complete the pre-manoeuvre checks and conduct a wing over to provide a lookout and to reduce speed. Scan the ASI throughout the wing over. Aim to roll out to the 130 knot attitude at 130 knots with the PCL at idle.
All clear, right, front, above, left, wing over left.
Use the rate of PCL reduction to achieve 130 knots wings level.
PCL idle. Coming out 130.
During the approach to the stall, note the rate of airspeed reduction and the attitude changes required to stay level.
Outside the circuit above 2000, cancel number 1. 110, stop trimming. 8,000 foot.
There are 5 symptoms that warn of the approaching stall. High nose attitude, low and reducing airspeed, sloppy controls, angle of attack warning, and buffet. At the point of stall, there will be a slight nose drop, a possible wing drop, and the aircraft will develop a rate of descent. The standard stall recovery should be commenced immediately, lowering the attitude sufficiently to unstall the wings, applying MCP, and using rudder to prevent further yaw. The power increase will result in left yaw and pitch up, so as the power kicks in, use forward stick and right rudder to remain balanced. Run the trims forward and right at the same time, and do not use aileron to pick up a wing until the wings are unstalled. Here's how it will look to you.
There's the stall, attitude, rudder.
Raise the nose on the buffet to the climb attitude.
6,000 feet. Positive rate of climb on both. Brakes on off. Landing gear up. Flap up. Air brake in. Lights are out. Flap up. Air brake in. By 150 knots.
Let's follow the stall through again in real time.
There's the stall. Attitude. Rudder. Raise the nose on the buffet. 6,000 feet. Positive rate of climb on both. Brakes on off. Landing gear up. Flap up. Air brake in. Lights are out. Flap up. Air brake in. By 150 knots.
If you experience a wing drop, remember the control column moves in an L shape so that the wings are unstalled before you level them. Now that you've seen the full stall recovery, it's important to realise that the aim of these sequences is to recognise and avoid the stall. Incipient stalls practice recognition and recovery from the pre-stall condition. The incipient stall recovery is initiated at the angle of attack warning or buffet, whichever occurs first. Maintain the attitude and apply MCP without allowing the aircraft to stall. There should be little or no height loss.
There's the beeper.
If the stall is mishandled and one wing stalls before the other, the aircraft may auto-rotate. Spin training is vital for recognition and recovery from this situation. The spin is commenced from a high altitude, so while climbing, carry out the pre-manoeuvre checks, remembering the asymmetric fuel check and the spin brief.
Flight will be sufficiently recovered by 6,000 AGL. Out here, that's 7,000 indicated. Equipment is all secure in the front, the rear. Fuel asymmetry is within a quarter tank. Spin brief. Will be a fully developed direct spin to the left. I will recover after 3 full turns or passing 9,000 foot. If I find myself out of control below 7,000 indicated, I will eject. Other considerations, I'm within gliding distance of piers and Gingin, and I'm not over a built-up area.
As with the stall, carry out a minimum of one wing over to reduce airspeed and to provide a lookout.
Left.
Roll out at 130 knots with the PCL at idle and the attitude slightly higher than that used for the pre-stall wing over.
All clear left and below. PCL idle. Holding out 130. Outside the circuit above 2,000, cancel number 1. 110, stop trimming.
At 80 knots, apply full pro-spin controls. 2 hands may be required on the control column. Note the rate of control input. The aircraft will enter the incipient phase. Recovery at this stage is rapid. Feel with your left hand to confirm the throttle is closed and ensure that your knees are level and locked on either side of the control column. Visually confirm the elevator central position by checking that your fist covers the ECS outlet.
Centralize.
If the spin stabilises, the nose will quickly drop to 70 degrees nose down. Keep your head up and scan the horizon for a feature to assist in counting the turns. Occasionally look inside of the altimeter. Note the rate of rotation and the attitude.
One turn. 2 turns. 3 turns recovering.
The spin recovery begins with confirming by feel that the throttle is closed and the ailerons are neutral.
3 turns recovering. PCL aileron. Turn needle left, full right rudder. Centralize.
Scan the turn needle to determine the spin direction. Don't rush. Even though you may have strong sensory cues about spin direction, you must develop the habit of religiously looking for and interpreting the turn needle. When sure of the spin direction, apply full opposite rudder and move the control column forward to the elevator central position. As soon as the spin stops, centralise the rudder and carry out a nose-low UA recovery. Use about 4G. Slowly apply power as the nose comes up to the horizon.
All RT2 NG. There's a rate of climb on both. Brakes on off. You're up. Flap up, air brake in. Lights are out, the flaps up, air brake in by 150 knots. We haven't oversped anything, we haven't overstressed. Orientation, we're heading northeast, still on the northern. Safety altitude not broken.
Now let's look at the spin again in real time.
The full developed spin. Pre-manoeuvre checks. Height will be sufficiently recovered by 6,000 AGL. Out here, that's 7,000 indicated. Equipment is all secure in the front, the rear. Fuel asymmetry is within a quarter tank. Spin brief. Will be a fully developed direct spin to the left. I will recover after 3 full turns or passing 9,000 foot. If I I find myself out of control below 7,000 indicated, I will eject. Other considerations, I'm within gliding distance of Pierce and Gingin, and I'm not over a built-up area. All clear, right, front, above, left, wing over left. All clear left and below. ECL idle. Following out 130. Outside the circuit above 2,000, cancelling the horn. 110, stop trimming. 13,200. 80 knots, low spin, up. Nose jump. 1 turn. 2 turns. 3 turns recovering. PCL aileron. 10 needle left, 4 right rudder. Centralise. G, 9,000 foot, power up. All Kati 2 MG. There's a rate of climb on both. Brakes on off. Gear up, flaps up, air brake in. Lights are out, the flaps up, air brake in by 150 knots. We haven't oversped anything, we haven't overstressed. Orientation, we're heading northeast, still in the northern. Safety altitude not broken.
Remember, the aim of these training sequences is to recognise and avoid unintentional stalls and spins. Let's recap the symptoms of a stall. 1. Low and reducing airspeed. 2. High nose attitude. 3. Sloppy controls. 4. Angle of attack warning. And 5. The buffet. The spin, although distinctive, can be very disorientating. The main symptom characterising autorotation is abnormal response to control inputs. In order to become an effective pilot, you must practice these recovery actions until they become instinctive. Low-level navigation allows you to make use of your low flying skills to manoeuvre your aircraft to a target at a particular time. It involves clear thinking and good map reading skills, as well as the ability to safely control the aircraft in a high-threat environment. This video demonstrates scans, rates and attitudes to help you visualise what you will experience whilst airborne. Let's pick up a typical low-level nav with the pilot locating gate out. The gate is the causeway at Lake Chittering and should be readily identifiable from this altitude. After ensuring the RT and low flying checks are complete, look for the large lake. Scan along it to find the causeway. Now identify a run-in point to set you up on the outbound track. Position as required. Descend to 350 feet above obstacles. Simultaneously adjust power to achieve your base speed by gate out.
On height, on heading, on airspeed. Stand by to hack. Hack. Clock running. DEF check. HSI heading 130, RMI 130, and standby reading 135. Engine, power to maintain 204 knots, my base speed. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all in the green. Fuel, 840 pounds, agrees with the quantity gauge, and balanced. And is sufficient for the nav.
The secret to successful low-level navigation is holding an accurate height, heading, and airspeed, all of which result from good lookout and rapid visual scanning. Lookout for hazards, features, and terrain avoidance involves scanning from one wingtip to the other. Height maintenance is accomplished by comparison of features of a known height with the aircraft's altitude. The horizon is used for attitude control and for perspective viewing of rates of climb and descent. Track is maintained by accurate heading control. This is simplified by visually maintaining the wings parallel with the horizon. Use bank on, bank off to correct to a feature or numerical heading. Indicated airspeed should remain constant in straight and level flight with the selected power. However, you will find that variations in terrain or base speed calculations will necessitate small PCL adjustments to accelerate or decelerate as required. Use whatever power is required to smoothly accelerate or decelerate the aircraft when a change in base speed is required. By now you will have noticed how quickly things move in the PC-9 at low level, so it is essential to keep ahead of the aircraft. The terrain now presents itself in elevation, and you must look out from wingtip to wingtip for features with vertical development. At low level, 99% of your time must be spent looking out. It is therefore necessary to hold the map up in front of the stopwatch so that it can be referred to without looking down into the cockpit. Do not rest your arm on the left-hand sill, combing or canopy locking mechanism. The nav cycle works in low nav, as in high and medium nav. Every 5 to 10 minutes you should get a positive pinpoint. Don't track crawl between pinpoints. Fly the required heading and airspeed. As with medium level nav, the pinpoint technique is still clock to map to ground. First we use the clock to determine where you are on the map. Then identify what the elapsed time at your next pinpoint will be. Take 2 minutes from this time to give the elapsed time at which you should start trying to identify the pinpoint feature. Now take a few seconds to familiarise yourself with what you should be seeing at the planned pinpoint. Remember to work from big to small. Now attempt to identify the large features outside. Once you have identified these, you should be able to identify smaller features using their relative positions to the larger ones. Thus, working from big to small, you should be able to locate your pinpoint feature. This procedure is now shown in real time.
My first checkpoint's at 7 minutes 54. It is the road that crosses my track, running out of this small town of Clackline, which should be about a mile to the right of track. That's at 7 minutes 54, so I'll take my map out just before 6 minutes. Going up to 6 minutes now, take the map out. I should have the lower ground to the right and the ridge line running along to the left. The point that I'm looking for is crossing over the road coming out of Clackline, and I can see on the map that that road runs along the top of the higher ground that's to my left. So now I'll just wait till I pick up that road, and that will be my pinpoint. You can see a road coming in from the left there now where the tree line is. That road should come across my track. When I cross it, that'll be the pinpoint. There's the road overhead now, 7 minutes 46.
This pinpoint can now be used to correct for time or track as required. Corrections to track and time are made as per the formulas in the Student Air Training Guide. Ensure your time adjustments are correctly applied.
I was there at 7 minutes 46. I wanted it to be there at 7 minutes 54. That means that I'm 8 seconds early. I'll adjust my base speed of 204 knots by 8 knots down to 196 for 3.5 minutes. And I'll put that correction in now at the 8-minute mark and take it out at 11.5 minutes. Now holding 196 knots.
At low level, wind will be much more apparent. If after having flown an accurate heading you find yourself off track at a positive pinpoint, fly back onto track and apply a heading correction to compensate for drift. Dust, smoke, water and windmills are useful in ascertaining the wind strength and direction.
I noted at my pinpoint that I was about 100 metres to the right of track. To get myself back onto track, I need to find a feature that's about 100 metres to my left, and that'll put me back onto track. I can see over to the left there a dam. I'll fly over to that feature. That'll put me back on track. There's the feature coming up there now. Back under my original heading of 130. And just adjusting my heading there. Bank on, bank off. Back on my heading of 130. Looking for the turn point at 12 minutes 34. I'll take the map out at 10 minutes 30.
Approximately 2 minutes prior to a turn point, the pilot should begin his turn point work cycle. Turn points are found in the same way as pinpoints. Plan the next leg, position the heading bug, and calculate the new base heading and speed. In this case, the turn point is on the road between Mount Bakewell and the township of York. Once the turn point is positively identified, fly toward it.
Coming up 10 minutes 30 now. At 10 minutes 30, I should be passing over some fairly low ground, and on the map I can see that I'm coming up to a minor road which I'm crossing over now. The turn point is just to the south of a large hill. I should be able to see that on the nose, and I can see a large hill with an antenna on top of it. I'll take that to be Mount Bakewell, seeing it's the largest feature around. Town of York to the right, you can see that coming into view now. The turn point is the road running to the north out of York, just to a small creek line. Turn point's positively identified. Setting up my next track of 060, next heading of 060, and my new base speed will be 200 knots to take into account the slight tailwind that I've experienced along this leg. There's 11.5 minutes, taking out my speed correction back to my new base speed of 200 knots. Here's the town, looking for the road running to the north out of the town. The outskirts of the town here, there's the road and the creek overhead now, 40 degrees angle of bank, 200 knots, new heading, roll out on 060.
Once established on the new heading, the pilot runs through a CEF check, noting the fuel trend, and then commences any timing corrections. The work cycle for pinpoints and turn points is also used for targets when approaching gate in. Once the target is identified, fly toward it. The pilot hacks his stopwatch when passing above the gate.
There should be a kink about 40 seconds before the target, where the railway line and the road kinks away to the left, and I can see the kink out there. Now where the road comes back around across my track, that's where the target is. I can see the road kinking back now. I can see what looks like it's an airfield to my left, 1130. It has to be my target. Head straight for it. That's my target. Stand by to hack. Hack.
If engine failure occurs on a low nav, the priority is to prepare for ejection. In the following simulated engine failure, note the pitch rate, the attitude, and the RT as the pilot prepares to eject.
Practice. Simulate QCL off. Dump the map. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Viper 234, abandoning. 17-minute mark. Nav 9, practice abandoning now.
Dump the map, run the trims full back, maintain the wings level, and adopt the ejection posture. The success of a low-level navigation exercise depends on a variety of factors. Ensure you accurately prepare your flight plan and map. Thoroughly study the route prior to flight, memorising details of the gates, en route features and turning points. Once airborne, maintain accurate height, heading and airspeed. Remember, work from clock to map to ground. And above all, apply airmanship and common sense at all times. Through the correct application of low nav techniques, you'll be able to effectively carry out low-level sorties, a skill vital for success in operational and emergency situations.
Cockpit instrumentation has come a long way since the Wright brothers simply looked out the front of their flying machine. No longer are pieces of string or vacuum-driven gyros used to determine flight conditions. These days, electronics have replaced many of the earlier instruments, and cathode ray tubes are used to display the information. The PC-9 you fly has the latest and most modern flight instrumentation of any trainer in the world. In this session, we will look at the electronic flight instrumentation system, or EFIS, fitted to the PC-9, how it works, what can go wrong, and how it is used. Firstly, you see the equipment fitted to the PC-9. Differences between the front and rear seats? Very little, really. The instrumentation is exactly the same. In fact, the displayed information is also the same. All of the controls operate in tandem, so whenever a selection is made in one cockpit, it appears on both sets of the instruments. The only difference between front and back is the circuit breaker panels, which are mainly located in the front. The EFIS system consists of two display screens, the electronic attitude indicator, or the EADI, and the electronic horizontal situation indicator, or the EHSI. The EFIS control panel and the heading select panel are located here immediately beneath the EHSI. There is also an EFIS swap button here, under COM2. In the electronics bay, there is a symbol generator which drives all four displays. If there is a problem with any display, the screens can be swapped over by pressing the EFIS swap button. However, in the unlikely case that the signal generator fails, all screens will be unusable. In this case, you would have to fly on the backup instruments. We'll talk more about systems failures later. The instruments are normally turned on when the inverter switch and avionics switches are turned on. The intensity of the display can also be adjusted. Now to look at each display and see what information is available. The EADI. This is the primary instrument for pitch and roll, and the secondary for heading. The aircraft symbol in the center of the instrument remains stationary, and the center of the dot represents your present situation. So in this case, we are wings level, with 3 degrees of pitch and a heading of 173 degrees. Notice that the sky is blue, the ground is brown, and the appropriately named sky pointer will always point vertically upwards. As far as scales go, the roll scale is calibrated in 10-degree increments. Pitch is in 5-degree increments, with a long line every 10 degrees. Heading is in 5-degree increments, marked every 30 degrees. At the bottom here is a rate of turn indicator. The scale marks indicate rate 1. Full scale is rate 2. The inclinometer is the only mechanical part of the instrument, and it shows slip or skid. The inputs for attitude, heading, and rate of turn come from the attitude heading reference system, or the AHRS. On the left-hand side of the EADI is the fast-slow indicator. It receives information from the angle of attack vane. The middle index indicates the ideal approach speed, and the fast and slow indices indicate 10 knots fast or slow. Unlike the AOA indexer, the fast and slow does not disappear after the landing gear is retracted. On the right-hand side of the instrument is the glide slope scale and pointer. This only appears if a localizer frequency is selected and the aircraft is within 105 degrees of the selected course. The runway symbol appears whenever a localizer frequency is selected. The runway is extremely sensitive and is useful as a trend indicator on finals. Down in the bottom left-hand corner is the marker beacon symbol. It illuminates OM in blue for the outer marker, MM in orange for the middle marker, and the IM in white for the inner marker. I'll press the test button and you can see the 3 markers overlapping. The marker beacon is active whenever the marker receiver in the VHF nav receiver detects a signal. The final component on the EADI is a photocell up here. It provides a small amount of brightness compensation to the display unit. Now, any unreliable information is highlighted in red, either red words, red lines, or red crosses. For example, in this case, the glide slope is unreliable and has a set of parallel lines running through it. That's the EADI and what it displays. Now, The EHSI can be operated in a number of modes, and the displays are quite different. Mode selections are made on the EFIS control panel here. This panel also controls the brightness of the screens by using the knob on the right-hand side. It clicks off, and this turns the brightness off. It does not turn the system off. The outer knob adjusts the EADI, and the inner adjusts the EHSI. Now, the mode select buttons for the EHSI are these push-to-select buttons here. Okay, firstly HSI. The EHSI compass display can be in two formats. At the moment it is showing the full 360-degree compass rose. A push of the HSI button and it changes to a 120-degree sector display. Notice the larger scale. This display is particularly useful for instrument takeoffs, GCAs, and other times when accurate heading control is required. Another push, and the display changes back to 360-degree format. The next button is the nav map button. At the moment, the system is showing the HSI compass card, or nav format. When the nav map button is pushed, it changes to a map display. As you can see, this format shows the selected TACAN station and radial in plan view. In this case, the TACAN station is east-sail, and the selected course is 060 degrees. The scale of this display can be changed with the range buttons. Push the range up to increase the scale of the map display and down to decrease the range. The range scales go from 2.5 nautical miles up to 500 nautical miles. Now, push nav map again, and the nav or normal HSI format returns. We're back to the selected radial and course deviation bar. The pointer selection switches determine which radio aids are displayed on the needles of the EHSI. The single white arrow displays either VOR or TACAN, and the selection is shown in the bottom left-hand corner of the display. The magenta double RMI pointer selects ADF or nothing, and is shown on the bottom right-hand side of the display. The nav button selects VOR, localizer, or TACAN, depending on which is tuned on the VHF nav set, to be used for the CDI and radial displays on the EHSI. In this case, the TACAN. ADF selects the tuned NDB as a displayed aid. The format the same for nav. In this case, the ESAL NDB. Now remember the differences here. The pointer selection switches control the white and magenta pointers on the EHSI, and the nav and the ADF buttons control which aid is being used for the green CDI or primary display. DG is the raw instrument mode, and no radio aid information is available at all. With DG, only the compass card and heading bug are shown. A very uncluttered display. Also, with DG, the only warning flags which will appear are the attitude and heading flags. If DG is pressed twice, the display returns to the HSI format. A special point to note here is that with the localizer, the single white RMI pointer disappears. They are the mode buttons. Now to have a closer look at the EHSI displays. So at present, the EHSI is in standard HSI format, and the ESAL TACAN and NDB are tuned. Notice the bottom left-hand corner shows the white pointer is indicating the bearing of the TACAN. The TACAN distance is shown there, and also up in the top right-hand corner, along with the ground speed. Use this ground speed cautiously because it's calculated by the rate of change of DME distance. This means that the ground speed is only valid when the aircraft is tracking directly to or from the station. Now, there is another very useful function available with distance. Say, for example, you are tracking from the ESAL TACAN to a VOR without any DME, and you need to tune the VOR for tracking. This DME hold button allows you to have the VOR as a tracking aid and the DME readout from the TACAN. So, press it, and notice that the ground speed disappears and the DME frequency appears instead. I've now selected the VOR frequency for Malakuta and the ESAL DME remains. Press the button again and the system looks like a single aid. Very handy. In the bottom right hand corner, see that the pointer 2 is showing ADF. In this case, the ESAL NDB. Remember, the pointer 1 can only display TACAN or VOR, and pointer 2 can only display an NDB. The two arrow buttons control the white and magenta pointers on the display. The aid which is used for the green CDI bar is shown on the left-hand side of the display. In this case, the TACAN is selected and a course of 060 is shown. So from this display, we can see that we're on the 265 radial at 1.3 nautical miles from the TACAN. If, say, the NDB goes off the air, then the red crosses at each end will cover the pointer to show that it is unreliable. If the TACAN now goes off the air, the indications change. Notice that the white needle disappears completely, and the red bars through the CDI tell you that the nav source for the CDI is unreliable. The green course deviation indicator is calibrated so that each dot represents 5 degrees in all modes except localizer. With localizer, the dot is a function of the ILS installation. The to from indicator indicates directions to a station in all modes except localizer when it is out of view. The black lubber line or heading symbol indicates a present heading, and the orange heading bug moves around the compass card to show selected heading, like this. The desired course and heading are set with, you guessed it, the course heading select panel. Now, there is a special time-saving function with these knobs. Rotate them normally to set a course or heading. But if you pull the course knob momentarily, the CDI will center and give you the direct course to the selected station. Similarly, a pull of the heading knob will slew the heading bug to beneath the heading symbol. So much for the standard HSI display. Remember that if the HSI button is pressed, we get a 120-degree sectored format. There, that's it. The main difference here is that you lose 3/4 of the compass card, so it's much easier to read the compass accurately. A digital heading bug readout is also shown under the heading bug. There are range markers with a half full scale distance shown on the inner circle. Now, we said before that the scale is set with the range buttons and can be anywhere between 5 and 1,000 miles. The increments for the inner scale are 0.5, 5, 10, 20, 40, 80, 120, 160, and 500. Also at the bottom of this sector display is a CDI presentation and to from indicator. The indications when nav map is pressed again to give the map display are the same with either TACAN or the VOR stations. Of course, you will only have a distance readout with your VOR selected if there's a co-located international DME station. However, if a localizer is tuned, the presentations are quite different. We'll tune the ESAL 22 ILS and note the differences. Right, the final course is 224. So I'll just dial that in. Now, notice that there is a glide slope scale and pointer on the right-hand side. This only appears localizer selected when the dial course is within 105 degrees of the aircraft heading. Notice also that it has appeared on the EADI. The other point to notice with the localizer is that the single arrow bearing pointer is gone. Press nav map again to switch back to the HSI format, and the presentation changes to the full compass rows. Distance will also be blank unless the ILS has co-located DME. The only other mode to look at with the HSI button is ADF. As you can see, the presentation is the same for VOR or TACAN. There will be no DME or ground speed available with ADF, and of course the accuracy is much less. The bearing accuracy is plus or minus 3 degrees, and your tracking tolerance is plus or minus 5 degrees. With the VOR, the accuracy is plus or minus 0.5 of a degree. All right, that covers nav mode. Now for the map mode. This is really only useful for en route navigation or instrument work because it gives a map-like presentation of your flight. To set up a map display, I'll go back to the full compass and nav. So the display shows East Sail TACAN as a navigation source, 060 as the desired course, and 1.3 as the distance. Now, push the nav map button and the display changes to give a map-like presentation. Notice that at the bottom of the display is a CDI presentation as before. There is a symbol for the TACAN station, and the desired course is shown with a line. The range circle displays the scale in nautical miles. The outer circle map also works in the 120-degree format. This display is similar to the sector display from before, except that this time, the 2 from annunciator above the aircraft symbol is replaced with the 2 from near the course readout. The digital heading readout is also back. The limitation with map is that it's only useful for TACAN or VORTAC stations. It will not draw symbols for any other radio aids. That is the EFIS system. It's a very flexible system, but remember a couple of points when you use it. Firstly, the sectored compass display is ideal for flying headings accurately, but for general orientation, the full compass display should be used. And secondly, if a localizer is a navigation source, the white RMI pointer is not available. Thirdly, ground speed is only accurate if you are tracking directly to or from a station. And finally, the ILS glide slope presentation will only be displayed when you are within 105 degrees of the desired course. Now, what can go wrong with the system? The short answer is, not very much at all. The equipment has few moving parts, and everything has a backup power. However, there are a few abnormal situations which can arise, and we'll cover them now. Firstly, as I mentioned earlier, all 4 display units are driven by a single symbol generator. If it's not your day, and it fails, you will have to fly under standby instruments. But, if a display screen fails or is unusable, simply press the EFIS swap switch here. The 2 screens swap over, and the switch illuminates to remind you. That is quite straightforward, but what if the control panel fails and you can't make any selections? In this case, the symbol generator will automatically set the EHSI picture to a standard HSI format, and a yellow CP off will be displayed in the upper left-hand corner of the EHSI. The symbol generator will also select nav for the nav mode so that you have a VHF radio aid on the EHSI. both the RMI needles will disappear. The heading bug will slew to the lover line and then follow the compass card, and the course pointer will slew direct to the station and stay there. That all sounds a bit complex, but in fact it's easy to use if you're ever unlucky enough to lose both control panels. So how does a system know if there's been a failure? Well, it is continuously checked by built-in testing routines, and you are alerted if any problem is found. So they are the bad problems. Some of the other fault warnings and indications you've already seen. If any radio aid information is unreliable, you will see a combination of red crosses and red parallel lines like this. If you see attitude foul, heading, or SG in red, you know the information is unreliable. If anything appears in yellow, maintenance action is required and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's about all that can go wrong. And don't forget, the basic airmanship point of checking circuit breakers before pulling the handle, it could save you a lot of paperwork later. Now, to see the equipment in action, we'll fly a short sortie just to see how the system works airborne.
We're taxiing at Laverton, and the Laverton NBD and TACAN are tuned. The TACAN is selected on the EHSI, and a course of 260 is dialed up with the expanded heading scale. When safely airborne and after takeoff checks are complete, press HSI to select a 360-degree compass. The intercept heading for 260 is 305, so dial that in and start the turn. 30 degrees of bank for an instrument turn, and the green speed indicator remains after the gear is up. Notice here that we are tracking away from the TACAN, which is the white needle, and that we are passing a beam, the NDB, which is the double needle. Pull the heading knob to slew the heading bug to the present heading. Notice the ground speed is in the top right-hand corner. It's only valid when you're tracking directly to or from the station. Now for the level off. Now for the level off. Right. Time to take a closer look at the various functions. Firstly, nav map for the map display. Three things here. Firstly, the TACAN symbol and the course line. Secondly, the CDI presentation at the bottom of the screen. And thirdly, the from indication is in the top left-hand side of the screen. Press the range knobs to vary the scale, like this. And notice the aid symbol disappears with the 2.5 mile scale. Also notice the ground speed. Now for a right turn. During the turn, select the Melbourne VOR and pull the course knob. We're on the 032 radial from Melbourne. The VOR has co-located the DME station so the ground speed works. reselect TACAN and press the DME hold button. We are still tracking to the Melbourne VOR, but the distance is now from the Laverton TACAN and the ground speed disappears. Now to display the NDB. Also press the ADF button, so the NDB is a primary aid, but is less accurate. It works the same as the VOR and TACAN. Now for the EFIS swap. The screens simply swap over, so press it again for the EHSI. There can't be a proper map display with ADF, so press nav map again for the normal presentation. Now to select the localizer. Notice the glide slope scale and that the to from has disappeared. Turn more than 105 degrees from the selected course and the glide slope disappears. The Avalon ILS is now tuned and Ripley is on the ADF. Final course is 177. So, to fly the ILS, we're almost on the finals course and 1 dot below glide slope. Select the expanded scale with the HSI button. That's a much better presentation for flying accurately. There's the Ripley overhead. On the EADI, notice the runway and the glide slope scale. The runway symbol is very sensitive and is useful for identifying trends. Complete the checks and then concentrate on accurate flying. Only small changes are required on finals. Don't over-control. The blue outer marker appears at the bottom left-hand corner. If the ILS has a middle marker, it flashes orange. Don't forget to look up for the landing. That covers the main functions of the EFIS system, how it works, what to do if something goes wrong, and what it looks like operating airborne. Enjoy flying with this great piece of equipment.
Formation flying is essentially a hand-eye skill. Like learning to ride a bike, it can be frustrating at first, but it is a skill which improves with practice. The basics are the same for any aircraft type and rely on your ability to perceive closure perspective and angle off, and to make appropriate and timely control corrections. Let's begin with station keeping, the building block for all formation sequences. In echelon, visually position the white nav light of the other aircraft over the exhaust stub to define vertical and longitudinal position. Use the leading edge of the tailplane for lateral spacing. Note the scan from the echelon line to the tailplane. In line astern formation, visually place the COM1 antenna over the air brake hole for vertical and lateral spacing. Gauge longitudinal spacing by the relative size of the other aircraft. Remember, 99% of your time on the wing must be spent looking at these lines. To maintain station in echelon, first fix any vertical errors, then longitudinal, then lateral.
Up on the plane. Forward onto the line. In along the line.
To maintain station in line astern, correct lateral errors first, then vertical, then longitudinal.
Across. Up. And forward.
Positioning errors can be easily corrected. Use elevator to maintain the relative vertical position. The control column movement required for this is small. Rest your forearm on your leg and apply pressure to the control column with your wrist. Lateral position is changed by adjusting the heading. Again, use small control column movements to generate small angle of bank changes. These in turn will produce small heading changes to either converge to or diverge from the other aircraft.
Bank on, bank off, diverge. Bank on, bank off, converge. Bank on, bank off, parallel.
Longitudinal position is adjusted with speed changes. If behind the desired line, increase power to establish an overtake, decrease power to decelerate to the leader's speed, then increase power to match the leader. The reverse applies if you're in front of the required position. Every longitudinal adjustment will require these 3 power changes.
Power up, power back, power up.
These power changes are done by feel and are usually in the order of 1 to 2 centimetres fore and aft. Station maintenance techniques are also used on the takeoff roll. Here it is necessary to maintain echelon with power while scanning both the echelon line and your half of the runway. Note the rate of rotation and the extension of the leader's nose strut. Keep the leader's aircraft on the horizon until safely clear of the ground. Once position maintenance has been mastered, it's a simple extension to change station. In this example, note the rate of movement and the key position at which backward movement is stabilised.
22 going echelon left. Thumbs up, power off, Stabilise. Bank on. Bank off. Stabilise. Up on the plane. Forward onto the line. In on the line.
Should you encounter the lead's wingtip vortices, fly down to regain clean air before moving sideways. While on the wing, you must still carry out the 10-minute checks and other checks as required. In order to fly off the lead, you'll only be able to look at one indication at a time. Scan each item quickly and think about what you've seen while looking at the leader. Scanning of the skid ball is still necessary to maintain balanced flight and accurate station keeping.
Okay, for the 10-minute check, we're in position. Engine, torque, ITT, and G, all temperature, all pressure, N2 hydraulic pressure, fuel 471 pounds, degrees of quantity gauge, sufficient and balanced. Electrics 28.2 volts, no discharge. PWS, no red or amber captions. Oxy 1500 psi, supply on, normal, connection secure, check rear. Altimeter 1025 set, 7,000 feet. 10-minute check complete.
Likewise, the after takeoff and before landing checks are done by feeling for the desired control, quickly scanning it to confirm the correct selection, then operating the control by feel.
Safely airborne, brakes on off. Landing gear up, flaps up, air brake in.
Turns in echelon use the same techniques of station maintenance, except that the power will need to be increased during the roll into the turn away and decreased during the roll out. The opposite is true for a turn towards the wingman. Note the roll rates in this sequence. The echelon or line astern scan lines remain the same regardless of the angle of bank or the position of the horizon. G will vary, so hold the back pressure with a small wrist movement. Corrections are made relative to the lead aircraft's axes. Belly turns are slightly more complicated. A belly turn may be used in a turn away from the wingman in VMC. They are useful for turns at high angles of bank, which would otherwise be difficult to carry out quickly. Roll with the leader and keep his fuselage on the horizon. Even though he looks bigger and closer, you are on the outside of the turn, so apply power as you ease on the back stick. Maintain position by adjusting power, back pressure and angle of bank while scanning the echelon line, which is now a line offset from the vertical. The leader should be able to roll out at any time and have you in position in echelon. Note the different roll rates used by the leader for roll in and roll out. A formation leader may change the lead at any time due to unserviceability or for exercise purposes. The lead change must only be done in VMC and clear of other traffic.
Voodoo 2, take the lead. Voodoo 2.
Establish one full wingspan separation and a moderate overtake speed. The lead change is effected when the old lead surrenders it with RT.
Voodoo 2, passing left, taking the lead. Voodoo 1.
Let's recap on some of the major points of close formation flying. To maintain station, ensure your vertical, lateral and longitudinal spacing is correct. This is ensured by continued scanning of the lead aircraft. Correction of errors when in echelon should be vertical first, then longitudinal and finally lateral. Correction of errors when in line astern are lateral, then vertical and finally longitudinal. Vertical corrections are made with elevator. Lateral corrections occur with heading changes and longitudinal corrections are made with speed changes, remembering that there are 3 power changes for every longitudinal adjustment. We have only touched on the basics of close formation flying. There are, of course, more advanced formation techniques, including combat formation. However, by practicing these basic techniques, you will be able to successfully deal with emergency recoveries, air-to-air refueling, and even demonstration and display flying.